Streaming live around the world, this is Paper Cuts with Brad and Jay.
I'm the one you love. I'm Jay. Thanks so much for stopping by. Over there's Brad. It's his show.
It's his show. That's why I'm the host, and we just love Jay.
Now you know it's all natural. I mean, nothing's rehearsed, right?
No, absolutely nothing is rehearsed on this show.
God, you just suck the life out of you. It feels like
you've got a lot grayer since we started this.
I have. I know. I have.
Tonight, we go back to the 90s with Matthew Fiander. We are live.
Here we go. Happy Saturday, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of Paper Cuts. Get settled in because we're going to do a little time traveling in this episode. We're going to talk about some good music. That's Brad over there. I'm Jay. Brad, I'm a little under the weather today.
I'm sorry, man.
Hopefully my voice lasts throughout the show. And I'll try not to, let these coughing spells, interrupt the answers or anything. I'll try to mute myself. How's that?
Mute yourself.
Yeah. Joining us this evening, you may have caught this cool dude out and about. He was traveling around North Carolina about a week ago, right? With our good friend, our honorary member of the show, Megan Lucas, talking about his book and his readings, his writings, all that stuff. He's a writer of Ringing in Your Ears. You picked this up, Main Street Rag. We're going to dive into it. Everyone, welcome to the show, Matthew Fiander. Matthew, how's it going, buddy?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. How y'all doing?
Doing pretty good, man. Pretty good.
We're here. Let's do this.
Right on.
Do you prefer Matt or Matthew? Does it matter?
No, it doesn't. Whichever one's fine. I realize I put Matt in the thing, so we can do that. Either way is great. Okay.
What are you normally doing on a Friday night?
It's Saturday, Brad.
See, I'm already messed up, man.
that was a good setup because I was right on it. I was right on it.
Well, normally on a Friday night we actually make pizza at the house.
Right.
So it is
there you go.
How was the thing? How was things last night?
Last night was great.
Okay. All right. But what about Saturday nights? What do you normally?
Yeah, what are you doing Saturday nights?
I just chat with two dopes on microphones.
Saturday night's a little more of a wild card. We got our daughter's almost 5, and so it's kind of depends on we're in the run of birthday parties and stuff in the afternoons, and so kind of it's like Saturday night's like a mood ring. It's like we can just kind of see how the day goes and then feel it out from there.
Yeah,
so we did some burgers tonight before we got here. It was good.
Speaking of birthday parties, my youngest turns 10 next Saturday, but today was actually her actual party, and there's this place here in Columbus called Scene 75, and it's pretty cool indoor amusement video games. It's got like a roller coaster, go-karts, and laser tag, and I was looking forward to it for weeks. I woke up sick. I couldn't go. She was there like 5 hours out, her and her little friends, and I missed out on go-karts and laser tag, by the way, so I may be a little grumpy.
Sorry, Jay. I haven't played laser tag in decades. Gosh, maybe I'll come out there and we'll play laser tag together.
Yeah. I mean, they all came back. My wife and my 2 kids came back, and all of her friends are like, when you're feeling better, we're going to go because they loved it. I mean, that's a cool
win-win. They get to do it again. You get to do it. It's great.
Exactly. So let's hop into your bright yellow book here, Ringing in Your Ears, which in case Brad doesn't know over there and our audience doesn't know, it's a line from a Buffalo Tom song.
Yep.
Till Lights Fade.
I never would have got that.
No, not at all.
No, not in a million years.
Why that title? Why is Buffalo Tom just your biggest '90s band for you, or where's the title come from?
So they were definitely big. Although it's funny you mentioned that, because growing up I was like, oh, Buffalo Tom is just like a huge radio band. Like they're just everywhere. And then I left New England and realized nope, that's a very regional thing. Like they were definitely big on the radio. Right. And by the time that record comes out, they're on a major label and they had built themselves up to something. And, they ended up on I think they're on the pilot episode of My So-Called Life, that show. And that came. So they ended up making something. But even then, I just remember hearing them on the radio and thinking they were a radio band. And they were just always around. And a few of their songs I mean, I love the band anyway, but a few of their songs always stuck with me. And I think like a lot of people that love Buffalo Tom, Taillights Fade was just like, I could never get away from it. You know, like it's a beautiful song. And then I'd be somewhere and some random band would play it live. And I'd be like,
I don't think they ever got their right due, because finally when that Taillights Fade blew up and a couple of other ones blew, they kind of got lost in the shuffle. There was like a little transitional period there in the middle 90s. They were just kind of like, and like you said, you know, radio was where people were going for to get these, to find out what's new and all. And it was like, okay, well now they have to rely on word of mouth, try to get, you know, good following. So yeah, I don't think they ever got their proper due, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they came up, but they were also like in that rush of bands, kind of like post Nevermind, where you know they had a reputation, they had built it, but they were still competing with everything that, you know, any label guy was trying to throw it at radio at the time, basically. And
it was almost like the next step of maybe a step, or the next stage or the stage after that of alternative of the 90s. They missed out on the early 90s, the 1989, 90, 91 period.
Yep.
But yeah, so they never really got their, you know. But I think they're a little bit more of a live band. We totally got into music instead of the book. Sorry, he's over to Brad's like, who?
It's good,
what?
man. I'm learning something. I'm learning.
Yeah, yeah.
So and then to answer your question, it was a song that actually came into the book late. The book was kind of up and going, and I kind of knew. I mean, I think I might have even had a finished draft before I realized, like, oh, that song fits in there super well, right? Like, you know, there's just some thematic things there, and in fact, in a version just before this one, the sort of I guess it's final now. It's in print, but there was a lot. Like, it was a lot more overt. Like, there was a lot of like, here's more of the lines coming up. Here's more sort of like coming back to the song, and I decided to peel some of that back. For some of it didn't fit, and then, you know, can't just use lyrics, it turns out. But yeah, it just slid in really nicely, and I don't know if it was just like it was sort of hiding back there on my mind, or but it just, you know, you got a couple sisters in the middle of the story, and the way the narrative works there. I don't think that's necessarily what it is in the song, but the way that narrative works there.
Right. Right. So you didn't really set out to make this to include a bunch of lyrics and to make it music centered. Then that kind of came on late with some of the later editing, or
I think the specific songs came in later. Okay. You know, I think that the tape at the heart of it, right, where there's Pearl Jam's 10 on one side and Nirvana's Nevermind on the other, was a tape I walked around with forever. I delivered papers when I was a kid, and I would I'd come home from school, put my headphones on, and walk around the neighborhood dropping papers off. And I can't tell you how many I would record them. My older brothers had all these CDs, and I would just take them and record them on the tape, and I just walked around listening to them. And so that was there pretty much from the beginning, that tape. And then the specific songs outside of that, like what are the other stuff someone like this would be into, kind of like, you know, again, that sort of 1.5 wave of alternative rock that came in the early to mid 90s. Like that was the space, right? But
right.
The specific songs themselves kind of started to just like tie themselves to certain parts of the book, and then some of them I just had to peel back later on, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but those were the days where you could go buy like a pack of Memorex 90-minute CDs. There's 45 minutes on both sides, and you know, you could put an album on both sides, and just you were the cool kid amongst the tape traders at school.
Oh yeah.
Memories. See, Brad, back in the 90s, late 80s,
tell me.
80s, we had these cassette tapes, okay? After vinyl and 8 tracks, all that stuff.
Is that like a VHS? Tapes. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, that was okay. Yeah. Brad's the youngin' of the show, so eventually that graduated to CDs. But like I got a feel for with the mixtapes and just talking about the 90s and going back, and it was reminiscing for me as I was reading this. I got a Wonder Years feel to it. Whereas, when I watched the Wonder Years and when it was out before, the narrator was in the story. And that's what I was getting out of this, where the narrator's in the story, basically, and it's all tied together. mean, that's a compliment that I was still in the Wonder Years.
Oh,
Brad,
yeah.
there's a show back called the Wonder
yeah?
Years.
On the big box TVs, you know, no
Right.
flat screens.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, this, where did the style come from? Was this always going to be the style, your intentions to have the narrator also be
That
tied
long
in?
distance.
Yeah. So
I don't think that was there early on. I think if I remember right, it was pretty much the straight, like, you're there as it's happening.
okay.
But honestly, I think the more music became a part of it, like, to me, I can't, like, I think about music and memory as these sort of interlocked things. Like a lot of people, I have just like memories that are tied specifically to very specific music, you know, like, but they can also be like really small. Like, I can, like, there's like a stretch of street that is not important at all, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's where I was listening to, like, whatever, Yield for the first time or something like, you know, like, it's not important, but they're embedded weirdly. And so, like, the more I thought
that
about
memory bop in your head there, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember exactly where I was when that happened. Yeah,
exactly. But then you're also like, but probably whatever I remember about that is not exact, right? Or or not even true, right? You're like, oh, you know, there's like a 10% chance I actually heard that a total other time, a total other place, but that's the one I've locked in, right? And so that sort of slippery, we were talking about before we came live, like memory and what we can remember and losing it, right? And I was just confessing, like, I start to get worried about my memory sometimes.
Yeah, I do too. It's very selective, but I'm not the one selecting it. It's my my memory's the one selecting it, so I don't know what's going on with that. So
yeah, so I think that was just interesting to me, like that. You know, like, if I get that time, like, if the narrator's looking back on this as opposed to talking about it when it's happening, you know, what are those little slips you can kind of mess around with?
I like that the sort of unreliable narrator you had going on, because it wasn't like you're worried about the whole thing being like, is it real or is it not? But it's like these little moments here and there, like, did I really say this out loud, or was it in my head, or did my dad really do this or whatever? I like those little moments, sort of like everything was kind of fuzzy, like you didn't quite remember what was going on, but maybe it happened this way, maybe it didn't.
Yeah. And then when you get to something really specific, you're like, wait, if it was just fuzzy, what am I supposed to do with the specificity, right? Like as the person remembering, right? Like, I can't get that down, but I can remember, like, you know, the nail polish color on the, you know, like, I can remember these really very specific things. What do I do with that, you know?
Before we get too far ahead, why don't you tell sort of the elevator pitch? What all is ringing in your ears about for people who might not know?
Sure. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So Ringing in Your Ears takes place in the early 90s outside Boston. The town in it is called Dorset. That's not a real town. But it's loosely modeled on where I grew up, sort of in the suburbs of Boston. And it's about two sisters, Louise, who goes by Blue, and her sister Christine. They're both in high school. And Christine goes missing early in the book, and Blue and the rest of the town are left to sort of try and figure out what happened to her, and who's responsible and all that sort of stuff. So it's a sort of missing person thing that's set in motion. But Blue is telling the story, and she's telling it from, you know, essentially now, you know, 30 years later, and trying to remember it and piece it together, and just sort of make sense of what happened.
Yeah.
I kind of got a feel of two stories in one, the way it's told, because, like, and I'm trying to tread lightly so I don't give anything away, but it starts off, you know, with Christine missing, and then the reveal, and then it seems like another part, the second half, it's like, okay, now let's figure out what happened. You know, so I mean, was that always your intentions too, or did that just happen when you were writing it to kind of make it? Unless I'm the only one thinking that it feels like two different stories in one, like the pre and the post almost.
Yeah, I
can see that.
Yeah, Brent. Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, and yeah, I don't know if I remember deciding to do that, but I don't ever remember it being anything else. Yeah, I mean, that was always kind of what I am. The sort of narrative of what happened is kind of how I always imagined it in some ways. The details, of course, changed and all that, but that timeline of, all right, maybe it's something. Oh no, it's definitely this. And now what? Was kind of always there.
Yeah.
William Stern has a question. Are you wearing a Husker Du shirt? Is that how you pronounce that? Because it's seared in my memory, connected to Paul Tremblay's Pallbearers Club now. Nice.
That's right. Yeah. I got my Husker Du shirt. Who I never got to see. I'm a little too young for that, but I did get to see Bob Mould play a few years ago, and it was great because he played Husker Du stuff. He played Sugar stuff. He played his own stuff. Like it was great. And he's got the drummer from Superchunk playing with him, and the bass player Jason Narducci, who's a Midwest guy. He's a Chicago guy, I think, but he's got a great band behind him.
Did you have to travel for that? What state are you in? So people.
I'm in North Carolina, so
I mean, do bands usually make their way through, or do you have to travel to other states to check people out?
No, we got great stuff coming through. I used to live in Chapel Hill, which is kind of that's the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. That's kind of the area where most bands tend to come through. And so I saw a lot of good stuff out there. That's where I saw Bob Mould play. I'm like an hour and a half from there now, so it's a little harder to get there, but we get lots of good stuff coming through here.
Yeah.
So how did your book end up with Main Street Rag?
Yeah, so I had been shopping it around for a while. It's like lots of other books, and actually I'm glad I did, because I think I was talking about this the other day. I think when I started shopping it, it was like maybe 16,000 words longer than it is now. It was like just a much longer book, and it was like there's Blue is a Little League umpire in it,
right?
And there was a lot more Little League in the early versions, more than anyone ever needed. I probably could tell you, like, I have like a weird, like, sort of faux fantasy Little League season of like stats and records for Dorset in 1992.
Nice.
And so, sending it to people and having people read it and getting told no and all that other stuff got me to sort of trim it down. And I knew some stuff that had come out of Main Street Rag that I really liked. Megan Lucas's novel. I know you guys know. Songbirds and Stray Dogs, which is, if you haven't read it, you got to read it. An amazing novel. And I was like, if they're putting out stuff like that, if I can get there, that'd be great. And I think Megan was reading for them at the time, actually, and thankfully was interested in this, and that's how I got there. Scott, who runs the place, was willing to put it out, and
cool.
And that's kind of where it's been. Yeah.
Is this your first published book, or?
Yes. Yeah. So I've done stories here and there for years, and then finally knuckled down and put a novel together. And
you've done like short stories. Novellas, short stories. Okay.
Yeah, all short stories pretty much until this one. I have a couple of those novels that novel drafts that never panned out, but this was the first one I really kind of put together and tried to get out there. Got lucky enough, someone bid on it. So yeah.
Was there a lot of other stuff you had to trim out just besides the Little League stuff, or is it basically, other than that, kind of what you set out intention wise to have the story unfold?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is like, for me, the thing that kept, and I'm sure we will keep talking about music, and I love writing and talking about music, but it was like Blue, especially as a character, but the characters at the heart of this that I was really interested in, and was like, like anyone else, figuring them out as I wrote about it. And I was like, this is more interesting stuff about her. This is more like, let's dive into it. And so it was like a lot of like stalling things to dig deeper into her, which is great, but really only interesting to me. Like if I'm trying to keep people interested in the story, and it is, I like a good sentence. I love rhythm and all that other stuff, but this has a narrative push to it. It wants you to get through the story. And so there was a lot of sort of peeling that stuff out, just backstory that could be a mention instead of 3 pages, that sort of stuff. So it was a lot of, I kind of built the world, especially around Little League. And then I built, Blue's life, especially, but to some extent Christine's, and then realized like I don't need a lot of it, or you can do it just sort of like through a little gesture, just like this little thing tells you as much as, again, those 3 or 4 pages that I had before told you, and probably does it a little more. Like it leaves enough that you can fill in, instead of like me prescribing like down to the letter everything that this character is.
Well, I think the way it is now, it's a little bit more character driven. So I mean, I would have probably been curious to see what you cut out to see if I felt that was more narrative, because you must have, for me, you must have cut enough out for me to think it's a little bit more character driven now. So maybe it works. There is a smoothness for it. I always like when it's character driven because I think it moves the story forward at a proper pace. So. Was that cutting the stuff out? Was that your decision, or was that the publisher's decision?
It was like a combination of like me just continually going through it. Until someone took it, I was like, I'd pick it up every now and again and just go back through it. And then some of it was feedback. People being like, I read this and there's lots of good stuff happening here, but like, really basic example, the book opens on opening day in that Little League, and there's a game that happens briefly. There were 2 games in the original version. And it's like why, right? Like I just decided that there were 2 games and I stuck to it, and it's one of those things. It's why like I love the collaborative nature of writing. Like eventually you have to show it to someone, and like someone was just like, why is there 2 games at the beginning? And I was like, oh, I don't have an answer, so let's trim it down to 1. And in some instances it's really that simple, just like I didn't think about it. I just wrote it down because it seemed part of the world I was sort of putting there. But yeah, I think once once you get a little hint of that stuff, and then you start looking in, you're like, oh yeah, I can trim this back, or actually this doesn't need to be here. I need something else in its place, or that sort of thing.
Yeah. So just to give Brad some trouble here. What Major League Baseball team is at the center of this of this story? Because Brad is our resident Yankees fan.
Just gonna leave.
What team is at the center of this?
Well, if he grew up in Massachusetts, I'll give you 3 guesses about who it might be.
It is the Boston Red Sox.
Were you angry reading it, Brad? Every time they were mentioned.
I just scratched out Red Sox every time I saw it.
Yeah.
No, I'm just playing.
The good news is these aren't halcyon days. For the early 90s are not great days for the Red Sox. They're very average at best.
They actually make reference to that a few times too, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But you were mentioning just a second ago about taking like, a character doing something over a course of, a couple pages and doing it in, a gesture. It's the old, show don't tell adage. You show it in action instead of explaining over a bunch of pages, which I think that lends to it being the smoother story, more streamlined and stuff like that. And I could tell in here, you showed a lot of things instead of, telling it to the audience instead.
Yeah. I think, it's funny. A lot of someone pointed out, a lot of the cuts at some point are like, it's like the last third of a line in some cases, or the last like it's like, Blue's at that game and she's got a lot of other stuff going on and she's trying to figure it all out. And like in early drafts, I just really wanted her to know. Like I wanted her to just like figure it all out in the moment, right? And that's not really that's just not that. I think like if a character's just figuring everything out all the time as you go, that's not that interesting, right? You're like, well, they know everything. What's the point? And so like cutting it at the gesture, right? At that little thing where, she's, the national anthem's playing and she just like pulls the mask down over her face and doesn't want to be a part of it, and what's going on there, instead of like, I knew I did that because, that extra, that need to kind of give them an out and let them know. That was a lot of the sort of line by line stuff that ended up sort of peeling out early on.
You really showcased, I think, how competitive Little League is
with the parents too.
for the coaches and the parents, because here, the big story is Center to Town, this missing girl, but yet the game must go on.
Right.
You know, this little league game must go on.
Yeah.
You know, while the parents are being talked to, they got to be there at the game, and you know, and they seem like they were fine. You know, they were focused on the game. It's just
And in the woods behind the field, they're searching for this missing girl.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's a common thing, though, right? Like we do,
Totally.
like, you know, sports heal all wounds and all that sort of stuff. I remember it's not the same thing, but I remember when the Saints won the Super Bowl not that long after Katrina.
Yeah.
And like the narrative after, what a great thing this is for New Orleans.
It's a real good story. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels good, but it doesn't fix a whole lot. There's still a lot going on that needs to be fixed. And so
you have those. You have, like, I know down south, high school football.
It's huge.
It's just life, you know, and like, yeah, people who have been out of high school for 20 or 30 years, but are so wrapped up into high school football. It's like, get a life, man. I mean, you graduated 30 years ago. It's just like
it's important down here.
Oh yeah.
More south than you. I mean, I'm talking about, like, yeah,
it's important here too.
Texas,
it's also
Alabama,
Georgia, and everybody.
Yeah.
But it's also, you know, sports is that moment of escapism. I can escape for 2 or 3 hours in this game and not have to worry about the missing girl in the woods.
Totally.
You know, because it's still going to be there when it's over, but just for a little bit, take my mind off of it to do something else.
Yeah. I think that's why Blue's there, right? You know, like it's her sister, and you know, like theoretically you'd be doing whatever you could, but you know, there's rules, there's foul lines, you gotta, you know, like it's all that stuff to sort of lock in.
Structure to what is now an unstructured life at the moment.
Yeah, totally.
And you made it in a way where Blue is kind of using baseball as a bonding mechanism with her dad, because, you know, 2 girls. I'm a father of 2 girls. I mean, so I try to talk sports with them, and it just goes over their head. You know, my oldest plays basketball, but she doesn't want me telling her what to do, how to do it, and she doesn't watch basketball with me. You know, but in the book, Blue is kind of using the baseball, being a Red Sox fan, and so is her dad, use that as like a bonding way to make the connection. That was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think she's just a character searching for that throughout the book. You know, like the thing, you know, her sister's music, her base love of baseball, but really, like, again, as you point to connect with her dad, because her sister's thing was basketball. You know, it's funny how that works, and so that. It does, you know, there are those 2 sides of the edge, you know, those two sides of the coin, right? It's, you know, like in one way we overplay our hand on sports a lot, right? You know, we're like, oh yeah, this is, you know, Paul McCartney telling us we're all patriots at the Super Bowl, or whatever, which is, it's all football references for me apparently. But then on the other hand, it's like, no, like people sit down and do this together as families all the time, and it's a genuine bonding experience, right? It's a genuine way people can sit in front of something and talk about something or not, and just be together and sort of figure it out. So the sort of big picture healing is sort of, I'm always a little suspicious of, but there are ways in which people do come together around these things.
Yeah, I got my wife into college football, Ohio State, because I mean, I'm born and raised a Buckeye, so she didn't you know, follow any kind of football sports before we got together, but now she's got the schedule memorized more than me, because she's like, I know we can't do anything that night because there's a Buckeye game at night, you know. And I'm like, all right, I trained you well, you know. So.
Brad, you'll be happy about this. Jay, do you want to know who my college football team is?
It's gonna be Michigan, isn't it?
It's probably gonna be Michigan.
No, it's not quite that bad. But
okay.
My wife graduated from Georgia, so I follow Georgia.
Bulldogs fan, sick.
Yeah.
We'll represent.
We should have won that. Don't get me started. I still sore the game. I mean, it was lights out. The greatest. That was a great game, both sides. But I knew they had too much time left. Did the freaking kicker? Okay, got sidetracked. No, so here's what I got to put up with. My father-in-law is a Michigan fan, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and well, he says he roots for the Buckeyes for all the games except for that game. So there are periods, you know, certain years we don't talk. So, yeah.
But that's
I
funny,
do- I-
right? Like the reverence a little bit, right? For like, and I feel like this happens maybe more with college sports than pro, but it's like if you're like that weird like conference allegiance, you know, like Michigan and Ohio State are mortal enemies, but like I know my son-in-law likes Ohio State, so as long as they're not playing, I'll root for him. You know, that whole thing.
And you know what's weird, like when they're in bowl games and stuff, like I'll root all Big Ten.
Yeah,
I don't
same
really,
way.
I don't
SEC.
really, I don't really root. I mean, I want all the Big Ten teams to do good when bowl season rolls around, you know, because it makes everybody look good in the Big Ten. But when it comes down to that game, it's just something different, you know. Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah. And I know, William. Okay, we should have hit the field goal. All right, we shouldn't have let them score the touchdown before that.
Could have done a lot of things different, right, Jay?
Yeah, I'm not
Can't
the
change
biggest.
it now.
Not the biggest Ryan Day fan yet, so you got to win the big one, buddy. Yeah,
but I do want to ask. Switch off sports for just a second.
Yeah.
Was it challenging to write a teenage female protagonist as your main character from her perspective, or did you even really think about it and just, it wasn't a challenge at all?
I was worried about it. I think it's probably the best. You know, I think I wanted to get it right. But I think the reason I wrote, I don't think I had the story and then filled the characters in. Like I found Blue, and I think she's had pieces of her and other stuff I'd worked on before. But once I had that character at the center, it was like, oh, I want to make sure I get this right. And so I was worried about that, you know, and I think, you know, to me, the funny part about it is like, now the book's out and I don't have a say anymore. It's like other people get to decide if I got it right or not.
right. I mean, but it depends on how they're going to interpret it. Each person's going to look at it differently, and so,
which is totally fair.
But,
but I think, I don't think. Yeah, she was just the character I wanted to write a book about. Really, once I sort of figured out who she was, and so that part was just going to happen. And then hopefully, if I could do it right, it would, you know, resonate and land somewhere. You know, my what I sort of just told myself is like, well, if no one ever bites on it, then well, you didn't do it, and go try again. You know, which may or may not be true, but thankfully, it's sort of managed to land with a couple people, and I had shown it to enough people before I really sent it out that, you know,
I was gonna say, did you have like female beta readers?
Somebody would have said something right.
This is not how a female teenager would act.
Right. And I felt pretty comfortable that someone would tell me like, hey, Matt,
you're way off base.
Yeah. Like, do something else, man. So
well, I mean, I think you nailed the character arc pretty good, because in the beginning, you know, again, try to, you know, tread lightly, not to give anything away, but like she was kind of background, you know, in the beginning of it, you know, but then she started finding her voice and then becoming a little bit tougher, you know, and not just figuring out what happened to her sister, but with her parents. That's what I picked up on, where things were always quiet. She tiptoed around things around her parents till the scene closer to the end when they start finding out what's happening, and she's kind of like telling them both, put them both in their place. So she kind of finds her voice at some point. That's a pretty cool arc for someone that age, still trying to find their true self, you know. So hopefully nobody comes at you like, hey, you're an old dude that shouldn't be writing about this.
Well, I wouldn't mean it that way. Was it, you know, because, you know, from a teenage female perspective, was it hard to get into, you know, her head, since you're obviously not a teenage girl? So
right. Yeah, also, I mean, it was definitely, yeah, it was a challenge, because I think like what I had to get out of was like what I would do. Yeah. You know, I think the thing I had going for me is I was a little younger than she is by a couple of years, but that was kind of when I was growing up, right? You know, and I'd sort of, in some ways, that's, you know, it's like literally a home game for me writing this book, right? Like, you know, I kind of know the town, I kind of know the time, I kind of know the music, and so, you know, fitting someone into that was the big question, and as long as I didn't make it me. Like, you know, I think that would be the big thing. If it was just like, so like if I was just like, I'll just make me at 16, and that'll work out as a female. Like that doesn't work at all. And so, but thankfully I like to sort of like take little snippets of things that have happened in my life, like just as sort of like, like color or whatever, but like I don't like to write about myself from my own experiences. So thankfully that's like a pretty easy leap for me to be like, oh, this isn't about me. Great. Let's make it about another character and see what that is.
Also, Jay, you were talking about her sort of finding herself, over this arc. And at the beginning, she was, in the shadow of her sister, because it was all about, oh, you're Christine's sister, you're Blue, you're the girl who played Little League. It wasn't really about her; it was about who she's associated with and everything like that. So, as the story progresses, she sort of comes out from under Christine's shadow and is able to sort of be her own self and be recognized as her own self instead of, well, you're Christine's little sister instead.
Yeah.
Was that sort of part of the arc you wanted to go with, sort of her finding herself and getting out from under her sister's shadow?
Yeah,
sort
a little
of
bit.
To be recognized as her own person?
Yeah, I think, once it's clear that she's going to sort of investigate, right? It's a crime story in some ways, right? And she's sort of our investigator. You kind of have to figure a few things out, right? Like if you're going to be at all effectual as that. And so, yeah, I think I wanted her to struggle to be in that new spot, to not be able to sort of hide. But then also to, sort of figure it out in some ways, and it's not perfect, right? And I don't think she, even those things those moments where she finds her voice and pushes back and does all that stuff, it's sometimes the way she does it is not great. Sometimes she does things I don't agree with. Sometimes she says things in the moment I wouldn't say or don't agree with. And so it's a growth and it's good. And I wanted that to happen, but I also didn't want it to be too clean. Right. I think that's the other thing. Like, a self-aware 16-year-old is still a 16-year-old, right? They're still going to say, I'm a relatively self-aware 41-year-old, I think, and I still say dumb stuff all the time. So, kind of letting that happen, being willing to let her grow and step outside and become herself, but also, not always get it right. I think is it's important generally, but I also think it just fits with sort of what's happening here.
I think that's what made it feel authentic, is she does make mistakes. Like she's not getting everything right because that makes it feel unrealistic. Like, so yeah, I like that she does mess up and she does do the wrong thing every now and then, but that's what everyone does. That's part of coming of age, growing up. You learn from your mistakes and move on with it. So I like that aspect of it.
Yes. A couple of things that her mom had said to her kind of hit home with me about music, and like there's a part where her mom's telling her watch out
the boys and
with their music, because they use that to tell you stuff that they can't tell you yourself. And I'm flashing back to of all the times I made mixtapes for people, and it's like then it graduated to mix CDs, but that. I mean, it was such a good time for music at that time. The music was so good that you had this group of people that was like, hey, this music's for me, and say the things that I want to say, and I just don't have the words for it, and I can name all the bands off that do that. It's like, so yeah, you would make a mixtape for the girl you liked, and it was all REM love songs and stuff, and mixed in with some stuff that made you think. It's just like, man, you could tell that the mom lived through it. It's just a couple of things that she said in there. I was like, hey, that's real. That's true.
He was calling you out, wasn't he?
Yeah. I was reminiscing, like, man, I made this girl this tape, this girl this CD. I'm like, yeah, she was watching me. So,
but I was saying a minute ago, like, I don't like to write about myself, but I will 100% cut myself down in a book. And that is like, I did the same thing. It was like, I was like, oh man, if I made a mixtape, it was like, they're going to get it. It's like, this is where I'm coming from. And if you're going to be on board with all of it.
Like, I don't have the words, but if you really want to know anything about me, listen to this tape here, front and back, and then I'll have a new tape for you tomorrow. And it's like all these songs are just like these deep cuts that you don't hear from the radio.
Oh, of course, right? Yeah. Because you're unique, your own self, right?
Right.
And there's something so like, like if you don't know what to say, like there's something actually like sweet about the gesture, right? You know, you're sort of trying to put something together. You're trying to give someone something that you thought about and like took time. And, you know, like if it was 90 minutes, you spent 90 minutes anyway, a couple hours putting that thing together. You had to walk up to the Walgreens to get the Memorex tapes.
Exactly. Sometimes Maxell, they were a little more expensive, but
that's right. Oh yeah.
Did
and
you
like, I can't write very clear, so it was hard to write the track list.
I don't know how many times I would go to like the public library and get like the newest tape or CD of somebody. I would just record it myself. Like, you weren't supposed to do that, but yeah, I did it.
Yeah.
Did you run around crowds who made you feel like you couldn't be both a Pearl Jam and Nirvana fan? That you had to pick one or the other? I remember a few people I was in my crowd, so I was like, you can't like both of them. I mean,
I think so. Pearl Jam to me was very like Nirvana was everyone.
Yeah.
And then Pearl Jam was like a couple people I knew. Like me and my friend Joe across the street were tight on Pearl Jam. That was like our thing. I mean, we listened to all that other stuff too. We listened to Nirvana. We did a lot of other things, but
Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, all that stuff. Still,
yeah, totally. But like to me, Pearl Jam felt like I knew other people that liked them, but it was like tied to like the kid I grew up with, and then maybe a couple other people, and then and then Nirvana was just everywhere. Yeah. So it wasn't like I had to pick necessarily, but it was like
I'm totally fine.
Anyone, but Pearl Jam was like a few people.
Totally fine that Nirvana gets the credit for starting that sort of that kind of music revolution. But I mean, let's face it, Pearl Jam still is the much better band. I mean, bring it, comments, bring it. I mean,
I like this, just stirring the pot up.
Anybody who's watched,
that's Jay's whole stick is to stir the pot.
Yeah, that's what I do. But no, I mean, I'm turning 46 soon. I was with them from first time I heard them, so I've been with them well over 30 years. It's just like my dad's the one that kind of got me into like rock when I was younger, So we would go to concerts together, and I knew about music and who influenced who and all. It's just something about when Pearl Jam came out. It was just the one that I attached myself to, and all these years later, I'm still, defending them because you'll have those people. Oh, they never made anything good after 10. I'm like, because you just don't know about it, It's just like. So this could go into a whole nother 5-hour conversation, really. So we better change.
I feel like, so I also still, I love Pearl Jam, and I did a pretty classic thing, I think, where I didn't have to choose, but if someone had made me, it would have been Pearl Jam. Like I loved Nirvana, but Pearl Jam was like, I was there's an early thing in the book.
Don't say the G word, because I hate the G word.
The G word.
Grunge.
Oh yeah, no.
Because I didn't agree with, like, Nirvana was a punk garage band. Pearl Jam was a stadium classic rock band. Soundgarden and Alice in Chains were heavy metal, hard rock stuff. So it's just like, yeah, that's just a social media term, I think. But
sure.
Yeah. Social media didn't exist back
then. I know. It was just a regular media thing. That's what it was. Sell flannel shirts and Time magazine and all that stuff. But
it was a way to simplify it and sell it, right? It's just like it's a section at Barnes and Noble or whatever. You just go, they went up to Seattle and got grunge, and then that's what they call it. And
G word.
The G word.
Right. And then, it's funny that, we started this by talking about Buffalo Tom. Like, they came to Boston and tried, and basically pumped up a bunch of bands here to, sort of see if that, it was, and again, none of those bands sounded like Buffalo Tom. Doesn't sound like those bands. They were closer to the, they, sounded like almost Dinosaur Jr. early, and then, like Rolling Stones. And then to me, no one sounds like Buffalo Tom once they find their stuff. And then, Letters to Cleo was another big Boston band at the time. Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec really loves them, and and they were a much brighter, poppier sort of power pop sort of thing. But they all poached them, and then they came down to Chapel Hill here to try and grab bands like Superchunk and Arch is a Loaf, and
it's unfortunate sometimes you only hear some of these sometimes in college radio. Yeah, I worked in college radio for 4 years, and they're like regular radio for like 12 years. But I remember some of these bands like Buffalo Tom and some of these bands I played at my college radio station. Then when I went into the real world and went to these radio stations, I'm like, do you not play this and this? And they're like, no, it just doesn't connect. It's not mainstream for people. I'm like, felt like a sellout a couple times.
I feel like maybe like REM is one of the few like genuine, like what you heard locally is also what you heard nationally. Like they were the Athens band and then they were the American band. Like they were, you know, I mean, and obviously one happened and then the other, but I feel like that crossover, like they had the time doing one thing and then did the other thing, as opposed to, you know, Pearl Jam, it's like they were together for what, 10 months before 10 came out or whatever. You know, like they had just come together.
You know, people were doing the whole story about, well, I like Andy Wood better and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, whatever. Just what those guys do together. Okay. Yeah. And Brad, we're going to get off this in a second because we're going to play a little trivia here, and then we'll go back to the book. But this is a subject that I know my wife's tired of me talking about it all the time, you know, and I will defend them until the day I die. So it's just something about that band. Everybody's got that one band that they connect to. So
sure.
I do want to ask. So I can tell you're a big music fan, but why was music so important to this particular story for you to include it so much and so heavily in the story?
I think just because it was so big for me then, and it really still is. Like, you know, I think I can't imagine going a day without listening to a fair amount of music. You know, it's been my thing. You know, I you know, before I really started publishing stories, I wrote music reviews and music criticism for years. You know, that was my sort of thing for a long time. You know, even as I was like getting an MFA and studying creative writing, it was like I spent a lot of my sort of quote unquote professional writing time writing music reviews. And it's just how I process a lot of things, for better or worse. You know, like it kind of goes through that. And it's, you know, I also feel like it's a challenge. Like I actually think it's kind of hard to write about music in fiction. And I feel like it's hard to do it without making it prescriptive, you know, like making it like the sort of like soundtrack to the sort of like, you know, like Treacly WB drama or something like that. You know, like they're feeling this way, so here are the sad lyrics, you know, that sort of thing. And I like, and I'm hoping I didn't do that. And I sort of like the challenge of sort of trying to figure that out, because, you know, I don't even remember. I had something on the other day and I was like, to my wife, I was like, you can change this up if you want. She's like, oh, you don't want this like hang yourself music on anymore? And I was like, oh, I wasn't thinking about it that way at all. Like it was just kind of like in the background, kind of nicely happening to me. And so like that weird, just like those differences.
You to a certain spot, I think. You don't have to like really get into it. You get into the zone, and that it takes you there. You know, it's like there are parts with this, and you didn't, you know, hear the sad lyrics because this is the sad part, and all that stuff. But I was thinking of the movie High Fidelity. Where there's a top 5 list for every single mood that he goes through in the movie. And I'm glad he didn't go that route where it was Blue feeling this way, so here's the top 5 songs she listened to, you know, because it could have went that way, but I'm glad he didn't go that way, because that would have been a little bit of overkill and take away from, you know, I think take away from what she was trying to do in the story. So
yeah.
And you mentioned that you sort of process stuff through music. I feel like the characters in here do too. Christine does, and what's her friend's name? Kathleen? Is it Catherine or Kathleen?
Kathleen.
I feel like they're all sort of processing their grief, and then what's going on with Christine, you know, sort of processing their daily lives, you know, all the stuff in her journal, kind of through music as well.
Well, since we've kind of turned this into
music chat,
what do you say we do a little musical trivia, Brad, just to make you feel lost, because Brad listens to like hip hop country or something. I'm not sure what he.
Not hip hop country, Jay. That didn't even exist.
I don't know what Brad listens to.
Just hip hop, just no country, just hip hop. Yeah. And I listen to bluegrass too. It's a weird combo, hip hop and bluegrass.
You're just digging yourself deeper. But
yeah, so
so Brad, who's your like hip hop Pearl Jam then? Like who's
this is so cliche, but Eminem.
Okay, yeah.
You know what? I mean, Pearl Jam fans have respect for Eminem. I listen to Eminem.
He is, whether you like his music or not, you can't deny, like, he is one of the best lyricists just ever. Whether you like what he actually has to say or not, just
Yeah, he is. And he's creative, and also I agree with you on that.
And
It's
I
not
think
too
it's
cliched.
all 10 of his albums have over 1 billion views streaming wise, and it's like he's number one streaming wise, at least in hip hop. All right, we'll go back to the rock and roll then.
Okay.
We can talk more about Eminem.
We'll do a little.
We can talk about Eminem for an hour too.
We'll do a little 90s rock lyric challenge here, Brad. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Is that what you spent the afternoon working on?
Yeah, 5 hours.
All right. So
At least I didn't dub over it, Jay. So I did that just for you.
well, you couldn't use like a real song because
That's
get
what
copyright. So what I have lyrics. Okay. You can tell me the artist or band. Extra points if you tell me the song. And even more extra points if you tell me the album. But this game, you don't even use points, so it doesn't really matter. Tell me what you know, okay?
All right.
Number one, and I'm going to butcher this because it's. But once I do, I think you know what it is.
Okay.
You sing it, Jay? Or
Well, here's a little background. Like one of the radio stations I used to work for here in Columbus, like back in like the early 2000s, 2003. They had this on the morning show. They had this game. They would, it was called Lost Lyrics. So we would grab lyrics from a deep cut, right? And anytime I was on the morning show with them, they would make me do it because the joke was I couldn't do it without singing. So here we are on a morning show in Columbus, and I'm like singing like words to Stevie Nicks songs, and they're loud. The other two are laughing at me because I couldn't just read the words. And so once I would do the tune, the phone lines would light up like crazy. People knew it. So okay, let me try this one because the first one's a little weird. Okay.
Okay.
Soy un perdedor. And
he knows already.
Yeah,
You want to do that? I can look.
It's for you. You tell us.
Okay.
I would not be able to guess these in 1,000 years. So there's no sense in me
Matt,
wasting my time.
Who is that?
So that's "Loser" by Beck.
There. Okay. Do you know what album?
Yeah, that's Mellow Gold, right?
Yeah. Yep. You got
triple points. Gosh, he's gonna ace this game. I can tell.
Getting crazy with the P's.
Yeah. Keep checking the points there, Brad, that we don't really use.
That we don't use.
All right. Here's number two. I'm trying to do this without singing too. They were all in love with dying. They were drinking from a fountain that was pouring like an avalanche coming down the mountain.
Oh, yeah, that's Pepper, right? By Butthole Surfers?
Yeah.
It's
best name for
Electric Ladyland. I'm not going to get it exactly right.
Electric Larryland is their little
band.
Ladyland. Yeah.
All right, we'll count that. I'll count that as a point.
Yeah, it's little Electric Ladyland's Jimi Hendrix. They were just playing.
That's right. Yeah, okay.
So
very different.
You got these. Your memory is helping you out here. Okay. All right. Number 3. I tried hard to have a father, but instead I had a dad.
Oh, that's Nirvana.
Well, I mean, you already got
it. The Servants?
Yep. Yes,
okay.
Correct.
In Utero.
Yeah. In Utero. Oh. Brad, this is your homework to go back and find all these songs and listen to
all these songs.
I'll make you a mixtape.
Do it. Mail it to me. Then I have to go buy a cassette player to play it on.
Yeah. Hit the thrift store. You'll find one. Yeah. Let's see. Number 4 here. She holds the hand that holds her down. She will rise above.
Jay would never forgive me if I didn't get this one right. That's Daughter by Pearl Jam from Versus, right?
From Versus.
No, yeah.
We would also accepted the greatest band ever. A little backstory about Versus. I don't know if you have the CD or the album version or whatever. It was originally called 5 Against 1.
Yep.
And they decided to change that, but they already had a bunch printed off. So if you were one of the lucky ones you got when that CD came out, it didn't say Versus on it. The back of it, underneath the CD, there's just a hand of 5 fingers. And, that was pretty cool. Just a little backstory.
Yeah.
Brad's like, whatever, Jay, just keep going.
You nerd, Jay.
I know, right? Like a little kid here. I'm so excited. Number 5. I like pleasure spiked with pain. And I can't say the next line because that gives away the title.
This music is your aeroplane.
Right.
Is Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
That's One Hot Minute, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Brian Bowyer, buddy of mine, he's a writer. He's a huge Chili Peppers fan.
Nice.
I'm not the biggest fan, but he's a huge fan. And I always mess with him. I tell him that One Hot Minute is my favorite album, but I guess that among Chili Pepper fans. So
Is that a bad one? I guess.
no, it's a different guitarist. It's Dave Navarro playing on it, and people are mad it's not John Frusciante or something like that. But we just totally turn this episode into like music history.
Hey, that's all right.
Pat thinks where are we at? Number 6. I was brain dead, locked out, numb, not up to speed.
Ooh.
Uh-oh.
And
I'll
I
give him
kind
another
of sung
line.
it. I kind of sung it because the singer kind of just talks his lines. Just a little hint.
Is there another line you give him after that?
Well, and then it gives away the.
Okay. Say it for him again, Jay.
Okay, I was brain dead, locked out, numb, not up to speed.
Oh.
The name of the song is a question.
I don't think I'm gonna get this one. Let me think about
I'll give you the name of the album.
it. Okay.
Name of the album is Monster.
Oh, it's REM.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what's the frequency, Kenneth?
Yeah, you got it. All right. Number 7. This one is hard not to sing. So, when I look into your eyes, I can see a love restrained.
Oh yeah. November Rain.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guns N'
Guns N'
Roses.
Roses. Use Your Illusion.
That's one, isn't it?
1. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Brad, are you taking notes? I will make you a mix. I'll make you a mix CD. We've upgraded.
Okay.
Number 8.
You made me
I
a
found-
Spotify playlist.
Yeah, that will probably be the 2023 version, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I found a treasure filled with sick pleasure, and it sits on a thin white line.
Oh, that's
Well, that's not drug related at all, is it?
no, right? That's Green Day, right?
Yes.
Is that? That's Geek Stink Breath from
You got it.
Insomniac?
From Insomniac, yes. Okay. 2 more here. Number 9. In my eyes, indisposed, in disguise, as no one knows.
Oh
In
no!
my eyes, indisposed. It's got one of the greatest videos. It's one of the main 4 G-word bands.
Oh, that's Black Hole Sun,
Yeah.
Soundgarden.
From
Super Unknown.
Unknown.
Yeah.
Okay. And one more.
Okay.
Brad's over there sweating. He's like, come on, Jay, bring it back.
No,
Okay.
I'm tallying up his points. He's got all the points so far, except
All right.
one because you told him the album cover or the album name.
I wouldn't have got
used-
it otherwise. That's
Number
fair.
10. I used to be a little boy, so old in my shoes.
That's Disarm by Smashing
You got
Pumpkins,
it.
right?
You got it.
Siamese Dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think you got all the points, right? You got it. You survived.
He got
We made it
29
through.
out of 30 points. He
Was there 30 points? Oh, yeah, there's 3 per. Okay, yeah. Okay.
He aced the test.
Yeah.
I think that's
Stressful.
the best
We
anyone's
don't
ever
have
done
a
on a
prize,
game.
or we don't have any prize or anything for you. Sorry.
We can mail him a sticker or something. We can get something sent to him.
I could mail you this list, and you can make your own mixtape.
There we go.
Send him a link to a Spotify playlist.
Yeah.
I feel like when you write a book and put a bunch of 90s music in it, and then someone asks you questions about 90s music, you should know.
You should probably know. You should probably know. It's pretty cool that you don't see very many books reference Slater Kinney, by the way. So I was like, all right, dude went kind of deep with that. Okay. Slater Kinney's an all-female group, Brad.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for telling me, because I didn't know that either. Never even heard of them.
I know. You ever watch Portlandia?
I know. I know what it is, but I've never watched it.
Yeah. One of them, Carrie Brownstein, is in it, and she's also in Slater Kinney.
Okay.
So there you go. Okay. A little trivia there.
That's right.
All right. We're done with the music, Brad. You can take it over now.
All right. So let's get really dark and depressing then, right?
Love it.
Me and Brad was like messaging back and forth. I was like, this book is like,
He was like, this is sad.
this is sad. It was breaking me down, man. I know Brad's got a question, but like, what was your headspace while you were writing this? Did you have to take breaks, step away from it some, or I hope I didn't take your question, Brad, but
No.
what was your headspace when you were writing this? Because some of it was pretty sad.
The whole thing is sad.
Yeah.
In a good way. It's a good book, but it's
definitely sad though. Yeah.
It's not like, yay, let's go adventure or anything.
I don't know. It's definitely like working on it and then coming out of it. It hung with me. You know, it's like it's a space, and especially working on something longer like this, and being really sort of invested in the people in the middle of it, like coming out of it, like, man, you're like, it's. Again, I didn't want to think about sort of what I would do in there, but like I also know some of this stuff. It's like how can you come out of it the other way? Like how you can come out of it not just sort of like totally sort of hurt by it. And so it would be hard to let it go, which is normally not a thing for me. Like normally, like I can, and it's not the only thing I've written that's relatively dark. But
I was going to ask you that if this is the darkest thing you've written, or is all your stuff just dark and sad?
The funny, I remember when I started writing, which was relatively late. I definitely wasn't one of those kids that like growing up like I'm gonna be a writer. It was like I think I got to college and sort of got interested in it and dove in. And I just remember turning things into other people and being like, this is hilarious. Like, they're going to love how funny this is. And then they'd come in and be like, this is the most depressing thing I've ever read. And it turns out like writing. Yeah,
Are you okay, Matt? Are you okay?
Yeah. I
mean, who hurt you? It's just,
I need some checks. But yeah, like it turns out writing funny is really hard. And then and I'm not good at it. And also like, that really wasn't what I wanted to do. Like, I think I thought that's what I wanted going into writing. And it turns out like, no, I'm after some other stuff. And so letting go of it's hard. But honestly, for me, I think it's more like writing stuff like this and like watching things that are hard to watch or reading things that are hard to read. Like for me, sometimes it's a place to put stuff. Like it's a place for me to put things that feel dark or heavy or hard, as opposed to like drumming them up, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So it can be. So it's like I said, it hung with me for a while, but it wasn't like a thing where it changed my day to day necessarily. Because it was more creating a space for me to kind of like work some things out and sort of leave some things there, as opposed to like, oh, I've created this sadness I need to sort of, drag with me into my life, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So this is like a whodunit, but I feel like the more focus was like on the grief and loss and the processing of what's going on and everything, to kind of play off what we were talking about. So was that sort of your goal? Like, I still wanted to know who did it, but you did a great job of like capturing the grief and loss of what was going on. I feel like a lot of other books like this would have just sort of glossed over that and been more about the detective part of it. Mm-hmm. I feel like you focused more on, the grief aspect of it. Was that sort of your intention to focus more heavily on that? And then, it's still whodunit, trying to figure out what's going on, but it's less a detective and more of dealing with and processing what has all happened. that make sense what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I hope so. I think that was my goal anyway. I didn't want one of those things to take away from the other. I don't think it makes sense to, like, why are you even trying to figure out what happened if you're not also trying to process all these other things, right? Like if I'm, like you're a 16-year-old kid, why dive headlong into all this stuff if you're not simultaneously trying to figure some things out and avoid other things, and so I think all the complications that come around procedure and investigation and all that other stuff, it has to happen, right? Like to me, it's just like I wouldn't know how to tell the story any other way, and I really, I also think, like, I like mysteries, I like whodunits, I like sort of the reveal, like it's
right.
It's really tempting to get everyone in a room and let someone explain what happened, at the end. But it's also like, I think hopefully with this book, it's like, that's not the end of anything, right? I think the most procedural sort of formulaic crime things, right? It ends with that great review. Everyone's in the room and everyone knows what everyone's done and the people are going to be punished. And then it's like, yeah, that's Monday. All these people have Tuesday to deal with, right? They all have to get up and be and live and exist. I'm a huge horror movie fan, and like Halloween is like the thing. It's not to keep making this metaphor. It's the Pearl Jam of horror movies. And it's, there's all this writing and all this conversation about Laurie as this sort of strong character, right? And she stands up to Michael Myers, and like, absolutely, but she's crumbled by the end of that movie. She has to have another day. We're gonna leave Halloween. We're gonna forget Halloween 2 is there, right? She still has to, like.
I like Halloween 2 a lot.
I think Halloween goes right into Halloween 2. I think you can watch both up together and as one. But
one 3-hour movie, yeah.
No, I do like them. All right, so let's say 2 days from now, she has to really deal with some.
Once she wakes up and deals with the hospital stuff, yeah.
She can't even go on a date with Ben Tramer because. But I don't even know where I started with this question. But
I like what you're talking about though. Like at the end of the book, it's not just we found not just this book, but these types of procedural books. We found the bad guy. Now it's all hunky dory and everyone's great. Like the grief is still there, the loss is still there. You still have to deal with all that. Just even though you found out maybe who did it, that doesn't really change or fix anything.
Right. There's a really cool I want the truth, you can't handle the truth type feel at the end too. The one part. So without giving too much away. Not a spoiler. But yeah, I totally, when I was reading that part, I was like, oh, this is like what was it, A Few Good Men. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth, because that's why I was getting the back and forth argument there. So yeah, it was a good build up to.
But I really appreciated that you sort of, at least to me, it felt like your main focus was on the grief and dealing with that, as opposed to like, because a lot of books still just like, oh, my so and so died, now let's go get revenge, and they don't like ever really think about it again. They're just like, they turn that part off and they're all focused on something else. But like, it lingers throughout the entire book, and I just appreciated you stuck with it, because that feels real. It feels natural, as opposed to oh, let's go get revenge, or let's find out who did it, and then we're all great again. Yeah, I like that you focused on it throughout the entire book.
Yeah, so I mean, you felt it through the family too. Yeah, I mean, but you felt it through the family, because you saw this divide between the mom and dad.
Pull them all apart.
That's why I saw about earlier when Blue finds her voice and kind of takes charge. She's the one that's telling them both to shut it, and fix it or whatever. So
I like how all the family, the mom, dad, and Blue, they all process it in different ways. Yeah. So the dad's kind of being quiet, or he wants people to be around. He invites everybody back to the house. He gets mad about the baseball game. He's really mad about something else. The mom just sort of closes herself off. Blue gets invested in baseball. She signs up to ump all the games. So there's different, you explore different avenues of grief and how they're processing it. And they're not just all doing it the same, which is also very realistic. I enjoyed that too.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I really hoped that none of them ended up in like cul-de-sacs. Like, I didn't want yeah, I think it's really hard to like explore that stuff without having, especially if you got a bunch of different characters processing things. It's hard to not just like sort of shove one of them off to just like doing bad stuff, just like just being, just sort of really going all the way off the rails. And I wanted to, I mean, yeah, everyone makes mistakes in this book. No one comes out totally clean, I don't think. But yeah, I was hoping to avoid that. Like I didn't want any characters, and I might be wrong, and I'm willing to hear it, but I didn't want any characters that just fully went off, right? That just fully lost the thread because of what was going on. Because I think, like forgetting everything isn't realistic. I think there's that everyone just loses their mind is also not realistic, right? Like there's just like a pure like just on a survival instinct front, you just like kind of have to get up and muddle through some things and sort of figure some things out, and like they all kind of sort of like I think lock into some kind of routine to varying degrees, right? Like something that was sort of sort of tie them down.
Something semi-normal as to what they did before. Yeah.
So
I feel like that's part of it too. Try to get back into the routine. Like you have to get back to as normal as what it could be now after something like that. So that's getting back into those different routines and stuff. Yeah.
So what sad thing are you writing now?
It might be sadder than this one. I don't know. I have sort of two different manuscripts kind of kicking around in my head, and the one that's at the forefront of my mind now is this sort of road novel in the Northeast, which is funny, by the way. I grew up there and I moved to North Carolina, and I was like, I'm not gonna like not for any reason one way or another. I was just like, I don't know, I kind of feel comfortable here. I'll write more about the South probably.
You're right.
I write about the Northeast all the time now. But yeah, it's there's lots of sort of vague loss going on around that road trip, and probably some drugs involved. There's lots of fun stuff.
Throw some drugs in there. Well, that's fine. That's fine. So you have some short stories published from the past. I forgot where I was going to go with this. What is your approach? Are you more of a short story person? Do you think novels take too much time or effort away from you? Or some people say short stories are a bigger effort because you got to get everything wrapped up in a shorter time. What do you prefer?
I mean, I have way more experience and comfortability with the story. Like I feel like I have a process for that. Like I just feel like like if I sit down and work on something, and like I kind of get a sense of if it's going to become something or not. And this, like, I think the stories are interesting because I think they're actually way harder in some ways than novels to get right. You got a lot of space in the novel,
right?
There's really no perfect novels, right? I mean, except this one, of course. But
of course, yeah.
I was going to say this one, and Megan, if you're listening, yours too.
Yeah, sure, yeah. But like, there's always something in there, where you just have space to sort of explore, right? And when I mean imperfect, it's like not everything fits perfectly, right? And you can't always get away with that in stories, especially the shorter they get. And so I think that's really hard, but I think the stakes are really low because you're writing a few thousand words and you try and get it right, and if it doesn't work, you try another one. Whereas like you write 90,000 words of a novel, and if you don't get those right, you got to write a whole other 90,000 words, do another one, right? So yeah, I'm much more comfortable with stories because I don't ever know where they're going. It's like I have a line or an image, or there's just like a really small thing that sticks in my head, and I just try and flesh it out over a few thousand words and see what happens. And I'm comfortable with the ambiguity of that. I find those moments where I'm working on something longer really difficult. Like I like to have some semblance of where it's going, even if it changes. I just want to kind of know. Right. So I'm trying to become more comfortable with that discomfort, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Paul's got a question about short stories. Do your short stories ever get away from you and become longer, like a novel or novella or anything? They expand farther than you think they will originally?
Yeah, so I have some of those I'm hoping that happens with, for sure. And the next thing that I'm sort of kicking around is an expansion of some shorter things, for sure.
Okay.
And then there are actually some chunks of Ringing in Your Ears that started as stories and became very different things in here because I just couldn't make them work on their own. But they ended up fitting in here. So yeah, there's especially, I think probably early on when I was writing stories, I was really writing sections of novels that I was not willing to finish because I don't know why no one stopped me, but I would be sending stories out that were just entirely too long. And no one was like everyone was very kind about it. They're like, hey, there's some good stuff here, but no. And they weren't just like, cut 3,000 words from this or make it a novel, right? You just pick a lane. And I couldn't do that. So I think some of that stuff, I also never let any, I keep everything in some form. And I'm always surprised by like, oh, I have a thing that might fit here that I wrote, 15 years ago or something.
Pull it out of the trunk.
Yeah, pretty much.
So are your short stories, are they all sort of the same kind of themes or genre as Ringing in Your Ears, or do you kind of write all over the place? Because I know you have something with Reckon, right? Or maybe multiple things with Reckon.
Yeah, so I have one thing with Reckon, which I think is similar. It's got a sort of crime feel to it, although I think like it's even more lyric, I think, than this, and a little more and very truncated. It's a pretty short piece. But I wouldn't say all my stuff is like that. I think a lot of I think especially when I'm writing stories, it's more about the language. Like it's a very language driven thing. I mean, it all is for me in some ways, but I wanted this to be a character in a novel, but I was also like, there is a plot here, right? There is a beginning, middle, and end. And I have that with some stories. I'm like, I want this to start here and I want it to resolve in certain ways. And then in other ones, I don't know that experimental is the word, but they're just a lot different. It's more just like, I'm going to see if I can work with this structure. We talked about music early on. I have a story that's just like the liner notes to an album, basically. Okay. And I was just like, how far can I go with this structure and how much can I sort of mess with it a little bit? So that's one of my goals a lot of times with short stuff.
You said you're a horror movie fan. Have you dipped your toe into writing horror at all?
I keep trying and I can't do it. I'm hoping I can figure it out.
Anybody could write horror. Come on. I have a whole community come at me now.
Well, I'm actually so I read, when I was a kid, I read Stephen King.
I was going to ask you, who did you read when you were younger? Kind of, get you started. So,
yeah. So I did a lot of, I wasn't, again, like I came to all this pretty late. Like when I was a kid, I would go through spurts of reading, but I wasn't like a big reader. But, I was like junior high, I did the classic, like I read a ton of King and loved it. And I've gone back to reread some of that. And we have, it's a great time to be a horror lit fan and to be a crime lit fan and to just be like there's just like so much good stuff going on. And so I'm just now starting to figure out some things about like how it works. And so I'm like, maybe I'll go back and try that at some point. But I feel like a tourist in horror literature right now. Like I haven't quite figured it out yet. So
see, I feel like stuff like this and stuff like Megan's book, you all are like right on the edge of like horror, because a lot of horror fans really loved her book, but it's it's not horror, it's not marketed as horror, but I think just the sort of the grief in that one and this one, the horror fans kind of eat that stuff up. So I think you're right on the edge. Throw a monster in there or a ghost, and
I was going to say, like have somebody's head get chopped off, you're good to go. Just a werewolf.
And this is the human horror too, so it could be just the human villains are really big right now too. Human horror, so you don't even have to throw supernatural or stuff in. Just have a really nasty villain, and you're still good to go.
It's just hard to do. Like I find, I just find it really interesting. Like, and I'm hoping, like, whenever I think of horror stories, I think of screenplays, just because that's, again, like most of my like sort of like love growing up of horror was film. And so, but yeah, I'm starting to sort of like, it's really interesting. If I could ever figure out the right story, I would definitely give it a shot. But hats off to horror writers. They're really hard.
Do you read much horror right now?
I'm trying, but it's like, and like I said, some of it's rereading stuff. And then like I've read some of Stephen Graham Jones' recent stuff, which is like crazy good and also like crazy violent and like hard to deal with. There's a scene in one of his books that I will never forget. I'm not going to say, I wouldn't even say it out loud. But
is it the Only Good Indians?
Yeah, in the middle.
Yeah, with the motorcycle, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, it's brutal, and it's so brutal it shouldn't work. But like truly, like, but the fact that we're sitting here talking about it and that it hit and landed, like it works. Like it's
that scene is what turned that book for me. I was like, this is like I liked it before that, and then that was like flipped the switch. Like I'm all on board now. Like this is amazing.
Yeah. It's that the ability to figure that out. Like I just don't know how to do stuff like that. Like I don't know how to do. I don't think yet. Anyway, like that. Like how do you get that grotesque, but also that affecting in some ways, right? You know, like because you can get someone's attention with that stuff.
Knowing how to make it work. Yeah. I mean,
there's so much pathos in there too. That's
right.
really hard to do.
Right.
Yeah, there's a fine balance between extreme and just doing all this violence and stuff just for the sake of it and actually having it have some
nothing against that. So don't come out as community just saying with all this, stuff that happens, but
actually having it have some form of, having to do with the actual story is, there's a fine line there, just too much and then not enough, or, finding that balance of it.
Yeah.
So, Matt, as we start winding down here, are you much of a social media person? Where can people stalk you? Do you care?
Yeah. So, I have some presence. I'm working on it. I'm on Twitter, X. What is it?
Yeah.
The bird site, not the bird site.
I know when I get an alert, just a little X pops up on my phone, and I'm like, hey, something naughty's just popping up. And it's just that, I'm like, all right. Because like if there's like 3 alerts, it'll say X. I'm like, all right. Don't let my wife see this. It's just Twitter.
I guess I need to update mine because mine still does the bird. I guess I don't have my app updated.
Does it really?
It updated mine without asking me. So.
Yeah.
But and the new, it's now got like a new like crackled background behind the X. It's like they put it on like the kitchen top at a rental or something like that. It's pretty good.
The whole thing's a disaster. It's a mess.
It is. But then, that new place, the Blue Sky place, it's just crickets.
There's nobody there.
Yeah. I mean, there's people there. It's just there's still no interaction. There's still no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to get over there because I just hear you need an invitation, and I'm like,
I've got an invite. I'll send you one if you want one.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Megan sent me one the other night, and I was like, "What is this place?" And I was like, "Hello." And
it's exactly like Twitter. Yeah.
You had to recreate everything. I'm like, "I'll just move everything over." Yeah. So you don't do TikTok?
No.
What's up with that? We should start a TikTok show. A bunch of old dudes try to learn TikTok because I got to ask my daughter every now and then, like, how do I post stuff? So.
Yeah. I thought about it. It seems like a good place for books, and it's tempting to try, but like I have to get over that hump, which is like I feel old to be there, which is I don't even know if that's true. That's just what I assume about it. So
I mean, I'm mostly just watch it to see people fall and get hurt and stuff. So yeah,
I taught for a long time. I don't anymore, but it was always like I knew once my students stopped talking about it, it was probably all right. Like Instagram, it's fine. They're not there. They're probably not there anymore. Whatever. Like, I don't have to worry about it being the new sort of like hip thing. And so I think who knows what they've moved on to now. Maybe they're still on TikTok. I don't know.
Something new tomorrow, probably. I don't know. Yeah.
My niece told me about one the other day I'd never heard of. You can post once a day and you take a picture of what's in front of you and what's behind you, and that's all you put. It was super weird. I was like, I don't know what this is.
That sounds dumb.
It does sound dumb. Like you can't even like write.
Somebody's probably making $1 billion from it. And I'm
probably
saying it sounds dumb. So
I think she's like 12 or 13. So that's what the kids are doing now.
I mean, this conversation could go another 5 hours. A bunch of grumpy old men talking about those kids and their social medias.
What even is this stuff?
I know.
I did want to ask real quick before we go. How was your event at City Lakes Books the other day? Megan was there, and what's the other author's name? Dale Neal was there. Was that a good event?
Yeah, it was great. I had this is my first time out to City Lights, and it's a great bookstore. They do great events out there. They like it's awesome. And Silva's a super cool town. I hadn't been out there before. It's Western North Carolina, out even past Asheville, nearly into Tennessee, and it is out in the mountains, and it's cool. You can hike. Like we literally drove out and took the day, and we hiked, and we saw a bunch of sights, and then had a great event. Got to talk with some people, and Megan read from her new book, Here in the Dark, which is a crazy good collection.
Did she say good stuff about us?
No, she didn't mention us, Jay.
Did she say good stuff about us?
Of course.
That's in her contract to say good stuff about us. So,
yeah, and Dale has a book called Appalachian Book of the Dead. That's
that sounds cool.
Yeah, it's a great book. The opening, we were talking about like visceral moments in books that get you. The opening of that book will lock.
Is that
you
fiction or nonfiction?
It's a novel. Yeah, it's fiction. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Was that the first time you got to do sort of an event like that? Because did this come out during COVID, or I don't know if you got to do anything with this. When did this come out?
Yeah, so it came out in May. I got to do.
Okay.
I did a reading here, but it was just me. So I've done a couple events like that, but it was not. Megan and I, and we, like lots of people, we were sort of connected through Twitter, and so we'd been sort of like long distance friends, and get to meet in person was great, and yeah, it was super fun. That's the having the book's great, but getting to like talk to people about it and get out and read and sort of see what people think and just like have conversation. We talked about everything. We talked about Columbo for a while. We talked about
cool.
all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah, it was great.
I've gotten to go to a few book events recently, and it's just a lot of fun just to talk to the authors about random stuff. Not necessarily the book, but just whatever else is going on, whatever else they want to talk about. It's cool to get to meet people in person too, instead of just screen to screen or whatever you'd call this. Cool to meet them in person.
Whatever you call this.
Yeah. Whatever you call this.
Whatever this is.
Ringing in your ears. We hope this turns out well for you. Hope people are starting to catch on to it, and it's very successful to you, because I know I got wrapped up into it for various reasons, and it's got a lot of that grief in there, and for some reason we get drawn to, but yeah,
it's good. It's real good.
Matt, it's been nice trying to picking your brain about some of the stuff, getting to know you, and hopefully you continue with those sad novels in the future.
Yeah, I'll work on it.
They're sad because he talks about the Red Sox. That's why they're so sad.
It's fair.
Matt Fiander, everyone.
Russell wants to know, does Malaprops have your book? Do you know?
They don't yet. I am working on it.
Okay.
But Russell, if you want to get in touch with me, I can get you one. That helps.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
So I will say I'm at Matt Fiander on Twitter, which is the handle there. And yeah, I'm on Facebook.
We probably have that on the show somewhere at the bottom.
Yeah, the show notes have your Twitter, and they have the link to Main Street Rag, where they can buy your book directly from them too.
Awesome. Matt, thanks for hanging out with us on spending Saturday night with us. I know it's crazy Saturday night. If this was Friday night, like Brad thought,
I did. I totally thought it was Friday.
You would have your pizza and all that stuff. So thanks for spending some time with us and letting us get to know you a little bit. And happy, successful future with this book. That's going to do it, Brad. Anything else to add?
No, just go out and pick it up. It's really good. If you're into, it's not horror, but if you're into the grief horror stuff, I think you'll really dig this, because it's heavily with the grief and the music and all that stuff. Baseball, check this one out. It's a lot of fun.
You'll do some.
It's not fun. Fun's not the right word.
It's
a really good book.
Okay.
It's a very sad, good book.
Don't hire us. Don't hire us to promote your book, because we're saying, hey, this is fun, and then
it's fun. You're like, this is the most depressing thing I've ever read.
Reading it, a 17-year-old is going to grab it and read it and tell their parent, and we're going to get in trouble. Okay, that's it. That's a wrap. Everyone, for the chat, thanks for joining us. Thanks for hanging out. Matt, thank you so much. Glad you decided to hang out with us tonight. Brad, that's it. Glad you got to see me.
Love you, Jay.
I know you do.
Thanks so much.
See ya.